As a community, Boggsville doesn't even exist anymore, but it had a profound impact on the early settlement of Colorado.
That you may think, oh, it's just 2 houses, it's not that much, but really so much has happened here.
Boggsville is a window into the past. It lets people see what was here, the importance of it to the Arkansas Valley.
Places like Boggsville are going to get set up and down the river here.
We had the Anglo-Saxon, the Spanish, and Indians all living right here at Boggsville.
Part of what makes Boggsville so important to Colorado, but I also believe so important to our nation, is that it does represent this early first-generation settlement. It represents the cultures that exist in the state today that were living together there.
That's part of Boggsville too, is a meeting of cultures, but also the passing of cultures.
This was the headquarters of a gigantic cattle industry and the headquarters of a massive sheep industry and a trading post that traded with American Indians on the Santa Fe Trail. It brought together some of the leading mercantile families of early Colorado into this one place. The property ownership of Romelda Luna and Amachi Prowers and Josefa Carson provides the land base for the fortunes that were made here.
This program was funded by
When I sometimes volunteer at the museum in town and people come in, I always say, you gotta go out to Boggsville. And they say, what's Boggsville?
Boggsville is located in the southeastern corner of the state of Colorado. The Arkansas River is approximately 2 miles north of Boggsville, and the Purgatory River is approximately a half-mile east.
There were people living here thousands of years ago, if you think of the Native American populations, and then the Spanish people who were living in the area since the 1600s.
Everything this side of the Arkansas River was Mexico. Everything on the other side was U.S.
The Santa Fe Trail ran on the north side of the Arkansas River
and came right here through the property. I always call it the I-70 or I-25 of Colorado, because that's basically what they did. They ran trade goods from back east to Santa Fe and on down into Mexico. As predecessors to this place, you had Bensville Fort, New Fort.
A lot of the early forts in Colorado were not military forts, they were trading forts, and Bent's Fort was probably one of the best known of them, and it was established by the Bent brothers, William and Charles Bent.
Boggsville was the first Anglo non-fortified settlement in this area.
It could serve the military, it could serve the traders coming along the Santa Fe Trail, and most importantly, at least initially, it could serve the Cheyennes and Arapahoes who claimed southern Colorado as part of their homeland in the 1840s and 1850s.
When it was first started here, it was known as Boggs Ranch.
Many of the people that were here had been associated with Bent St. Vrain and Company. When that company dissolves, guys have to find another way to make a living.
The place was significant as a farm for many, many years.
Farming and ranching was the answer to that.
As it became more a village with lots and lots of people, it was no longer just a ranch, then it became a ville, or Boggsville, a village.
Built by relatives of the Bents, it became the trading hub of southeastern Colorado.
There was stores, county seat, blacksmith shops, stage stops, all kinds of enterprises.
For its size, Boggsville was an extremely economically influential community. It was the headquarters of a massive sheep operation and an even larger cattle operation. It was a hub of trade for Cheyenne and Arapaho Indians. It was a hub of trade for traders on the Santa Fe Trail. This community, Boggsville, was the heir to Bent's Old Fort of the 1840s.
Thomas Boggs, his story really begins in Missouri. He was the son of Lilburn Boggs, who was the governor of Missouri, and he was the great-grandson of Daniel Boone. His mother was Panthea Boone. From an early age, Thomas Boggs was very inquisitive and was very interested in the West, and early on went west and was able to become employed by his uncles at Bent's Fort. And as a result of that relationship, he found himself spending a lot of time in Taos, because of course they were trading back and forth between Bent's Fort and Taos and Santa Fe. And that's where, of course, he met Romelda Luna.
Romelda Luna Boggs was the daughter of a very prominent New Mexico trading family. She was related to the Jaramillos, who were all of that in New Mexico during the era of the fur trade and the Santa Fe Trail. She was from one of the most prominent trading families. You could accurately describe Romelda Boggs and her aunt Josefa Carson as the belles of Santa Fe. They were the beautiful daughters of the most powerful trading families in the most scintillating part of New Mexico. Romelda was the stepdaughter of Charles Bent, and Thomas Boggs was Charles Bent's nephew. Inevitably, he was going to meet Romelda Luna. And Romelda Luna was quite a catch. Her future was assured. So for Thomas Boggs, you could really argue that by marrying Romelda Luna, he married up.
They were married in 1846. And that was a significant year in the history of the Southwest because that was the start of the Mexican-American War. So shortly after they were married, and of course at that time they're living together in Mexico, the Mexican-American War broke out, and Bent's Fort was involved with that. Thomas Boggs was involved with the war. The war, in fact, was really the focus.
In 1860,
20-some structures here at one time.
Boggsville's a busy, busy place.
Boggsville was so important. It was the Bent County seat.
it had the sheriff's office and the justice of the peace.
They had a blacksmith shop, they had the school.
There was a big barn, which was actually Huff's trading post.
Not far from that was a general store. There were ranch buildings and outbuildings to serve cattle and sheep.
They had all kinds of other enterprises going on here to back up and support the Boggs Ranch, as it was early called.
Well, like everything out here, it's a multicultural. Most of the men are Anglo folks, most of the ladies. I mean, quite frankly, there's not very many Anglo ladies out here, so it's a mixture of Spanish, Hispanic, Mexican ladies here. There's Amachi and Indian ladies here.
With various families living around the area that help support the farming, the ranching.
The Boggs household, which would have reminded you for all the world of a southern plantation with a wooded driveway to a whitewashed house with a wraparound veranda. Just beyond that was the Prowers household with an open courtyard that faced to the east, and very often the teepee encampments of Amachi Prowers' Cheyenne relatives nearby.
The Allen family, the Ritz family.
There was quite a few children running around from all the families that lived here.
There was even a small house nearby that was the residence of Kit and Josefa Carson.
Kit Carson was, everybody knows, a famous frontiersman.
Kit Carson was such a significant person in our history because of the role he played in developing the West.
An incredible career as a trapper and a mountain man and a guide and a military commander.
Kit Carson is so famous, and he's probably the most known frontiersman.
Kit was in and out this country all the time, coming up and down the Santa Fe Trail.
His relationship with the Native Americans, his relationship with the New Mexican community, his relationship to Bent's Fort.
Thomas Boggs and Kit Carson had been friends for as long as they had been in the West together. They had a very close friendship. And at the end of Kit Carson's life, he was looking for a place to settle down.
He gets over here late December of '67, early January '68.
Kit and his wife Josefa moved to Boggsville.
Kit Carson would have been 58 when he moved over here.
Like the Boggs family, like the Prowers family, the land that Kit Carson occupied was owned by his wife, Josefa Carson.
As a niece of Cornelia Vigil, Josefa had claim to part of this land, 2,040 acres.
Another Jaramillo who had very strong connections to the trading families of Taos and Santa Fe.
Boggsville sits on what was the Vigil St. Vrain land grant, or Los Animas land grant, and Kit had purchased 2 parcels of land.
Josefa Carson was a beauty in her own right as well, and again, Kit Carson really married above himself to marry a woman like Josefa Jaramillo.
His wife was given birth to their 7th child.
Kit Carson encountered tragedy. His wife died in childbirth.
The loss of her, and combined with his war wounds and hard lifestyle, really caused him, I think he was already ill at the time, and I think the loss of her was just more than he could bear.
The day before Kit died, the kids, of course, were over here at Boggsville, and Kit asked the folks at Fort Lyon to bring two of the boys, Kit the second and Charles, my grandpa, over to see him. And they went and visited and so forth, and Kit sent over to the settler shop. They bought straw hats, and as the kids were coming back across the river, my grandpa's hat flew down the river and floated away. May 14th, they took Kit over to Fort Lyon. They put a little pallet in the corner. The next day, they came over and told him his dad wasn't here anymore. They buried them, both of them, in the garden. So those 6 younger kids were raised in this house. People out here, you help each other out, you take care of each other.
Without the women, this place would have never existed.
These were women who were from very prominent families. And Amachi, her father was a chief of his tribe. So these were women who were born in leadership positions and very prominent in their cultures and their civilizations.
The property ownership of Romelda Luna and Amachi Prowers and Josefa Carson provides the land base for the fortunes that were made here.
This story, this place, shows and demonstrates the important role of women. They decided to make Boggsville the county seat. And I think that was because of the presence of women. You know, women were always a civilizing presence on the frontier.
Boggsville only lasted approximately 10 years.
And as railroads often did, they picked the winners and the losers on some of these earlier settlements, and they established the present-day town of Las Animas.
Taking away the commerce of the Santa Fe Trail.
When that happened, the county seat that was out here in Boggsville was moved to Las Animas, and everything moved to Las Animas.
And Boggsville slowly declined.
Congress had to approve up all these land grants that the Mexican and Spanish governments had given out. Tom Boggs, his claim doesn't get approved. That's when he's going to move off. And Vigil St. Vrain land grant, the Las Animas land grant, they didn't allow most of it.
And that pretty much was the end of Boggsville.
Old adobe buildings, you know, somebody's got to be here to take care of them.
Boggsville has approximately 109 acres of land. Visitors, when they come initially, they see 2 houses. One is the Boggs house and the other one is the Pryor's house.
If the walls could talk, if those trees out there could talk, they'd have some great stories, I imagine.
It's constantly maintenance to keep the adobe from cracking.
Somebody's got to take care of it as best they can.
Benton County Historical Society, they felt the need to restore this area out here, so they purchased the land. Property of Boggsville, the house and stuff, is now just recently got on the National Treasure for historical sites.
The culture and the diversity and what happened here with the history and all of the people, it's just, I just find it fascinating.
Boggsville to me represents the unknown, the unanswered, love, hate, you know, all the things that make us human beings. Just a small little, you know, area, a nutshell of humanity.
Part of what makes Boggsville so important to Colorado, but I also believe so important to our nation, is that it does represent this early first-generation settlement. It represents the cultures that exist in the state today that were living together there.
Colorado in the 1860s was not always a place of inclusion. It was just as often, maybe more often, a place of exclusion of Hispanos, of American Indians. But at Boggsville, the Boggs family, the Prowers family, the Carson family made inclusion work for them. And the buildings they left behind represent the kind of community that they aspired for.
It's so much about America today, and so it was part of our fiber all along, and I think it's just something that's the story we need to continue to tell people, because we've always lived in a multicultural place. And in today's world, and with some of the things that have been going on in some of our cities and our communities, I think it's so important to remind ourselves that we are a multicultural country, and we always have been, and we always will be.